Welcome to Redacted Tonight VIP. I'm Lee Camp. Today on the show, I have the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. I know. I was surprised he said yes, too. Well, okay, not really, but kinda I do. Friend of the show, journalist Max Blumenthal, went down to Venezuela and interviewed President Maduro. I've had Max on this show several times, and he's one of the best at what he does. So I'm going to show you some clips of his interview with Maduro. In the second half, I also have peace activist and co-founder of Code Pink, Medea Benjamin. I think Medea might hold the record for most times dragged out of congressional hearings by police. Anyway, I'll speak with Medea in the second half. But first, you all know who President Maduro is. He's the actual elected president of Venezuela, as opposed to the unelected person the U.S. has tried to insert into Venezuela, Juan Guaido, in our pathetic failed coup attempt that looked like it was set up by a kindergarten class without enough ventilation on acrylic paint day. Even if you don't watch this show very often, you've surely heard all the mainstream media propaganda about Maduro. He's a dictator. He's intentionally starving his people. Well, let's see what he says in his own words. Here's a clip of Max Blumenthal working with the Gray Zone, talking to President Maduro last week. I'm sure Max scored this interview after Maduro heard that he had indeed appeared on Redacted Tonight VIP. I mean, I think Maduro was probably like, hold on, he's been on Redacted tonight? Get him in here. Get him to the presidential palace. What are we waiting for? He's been on Redacted tonight. Anyway, that's what I'd like to believe in my head when I go to sleep at night. Anyway, take a look.
There is a growing movement of solidarity and support for Venezuela in the world. Venezuela is the victim of a brutal, criminal, multidimensional aggression. The people of the United States should know that this is a war. Experts call it an unconventional war. It is an economic, financial trade war. The United States, the government of the United States, persecutes Venezuela so that it cannot buy medicine around the world. They persecute us so we cannot buy food, supplies, commodities, so we cannot buy anything around the world.
Okay. So if that's true, then the idea that he's starving his people is bullshit. He would like to feed his people, but he can't because of the U.S. economic war on his country. But let's not assume he's telling the truth. I think you should always assume a politician is lying their face off until you find out otherwise. It's kind of like assuming an alligator wants to eat you until he proves otherwise. I never just assume an alligator is like gonna play it cool, you know? So let's look into what Maduro is claiming. The widely respected Center for Economic and Policy Research came out with a paper recently that found that economic sanctions implemented by the Trump administration in 2017 have caused tens of thousands of deaths and are rapidly worsening the humanitarian crisis. An estimated more than 40,000 deaths from 2017 to 2018. The sanctions have reduced the availability of food and medicine and increased disease and mortality. Why haven't you heard about this study in your mainstream media? Good question. Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting put out an article showing that the study linking U.S. sanctions to Venezuelan deaths was buried even by outlets like Reuters for over a month, and in most cases buried permanently. And those numbers are actually before Trump recently announced new sanctions on the Venezuelan government, creating a full embargo of the country, meaning that the number of people killed is only going to get worse. This economic war is targeting the weakest in that society, those who need food and medicine the most. So I guess Maduro is telling the truth so far. Huh. CNN told me to believe he's a big fat liar who kicks puppy dogs in his free time. Apparently, at least so far in this interview, not so much. Here's a little bit more.
They have frozen accounts worth over $20 billion in banks in Europe and around the world. Just in gold reserves of the Central Bank of Venezuela. You know that central banks in countries have special immunity. That's a post-war agreement. Special immunity for central banks. And all the gold reserves they have around the world have special immunity according to international law. Well, the U.S. government in complicity with the British government, have frozen, have stolen over $1.4 billion from Venezuela in gold reserves.
That is ridiculously true. That's true. Here's from Bloomberg. Venezuela was stymied in its bid to pull $1.2 billion worth of gold out of the Bank of England, according to people familiar with the matter. The $1.2 billion of gold is a big chunk of the $8 billion in foreign reserves held by the Venezuelan central bank. So we've stolen billions of dollars of their money as the poor in their country are starving. And for what? Why are we doing this, huh? Our mainstream media tells us to feel bad for some Latin American children, right? When they're at our border, when we put them in cages, the Trump administration or the Obama administration puts them in cages, when their parents are stolen by ICE raids, which happened recently. The media tugs at our heartstrings and tells us to care about those kids. So why shouldn't we feel bad for the people struggling in Venezuela after we stole billions of their money? Huh? What's the difference? No, our mainstream media says we should side with the likes of Donald Trump, John Bolton, and Elliott Abrams on this issue instead. And for some odd reason, Maduro is not a fan of them.
John Bolton, this KKK extremist, and Elliott Abrams, this KKK extremist, who is known for the Iran-Contra scandal in the 80s, they say we have to leave the Venezuelan people without food. They say it openly and publicly. They're immoral. We have to defeat them. U.S. public opinion has to rise up in solidarity with the Venezuelan people.
That is terrible. How dare Maduro malign the good name of John Bolton and Elliott Abrams? These are noble men who have given their lives to public service. I'm kidding. I was kidding. They're psychopath. I was public service. I was joking. They're crazy. They're awful. They're murderers. That's like thanking ExxonMobil for helping you drive to Disneyland. They don't give a about your vacation. Public service. ExxonMobil just wants to profit as much as possible. Does anyone believe John Bolton wants to do anything other than blow up the world? He just wants to kill as many people as possible before he has to retire. Even liberals who have bought into the NPR, MSNBC, and Fox News talking points and think we have to crush Venezuela to help their people, even those people know that John Bolton and Elliott Abrams are f***ing animals. They are ruthless killing machines. PBS could even tell you that. Anyway, Maduro next gets into the recent attempted assassination he faced.
In August of 2018, you faced an assassination attempt with drones strapped with explosives attempted to detonate during a military parade when you were standing with your ministers. So it was an attempt to kill you and many of your ministers. I want to know what was going through your head during the assassination attempt. What were you thinking as it occurred, and what was the hardest decision you took during this period from 2017 leading up to the coup?
I can tell you that today I have proof that the assassination attempt was ordered by John Bolton in the White House.
You're saying John Bolton personally commanded an assassination attempt against you?
And he waited for the results in the White House. If you dig deeper, you'll see it someday. The proof will come out how John Bolton, in coordination with then Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos, and they gave the task to Julio Borges, a former legislator in Venezuela.
Now, I don't know what proof he has that Bolton was the one who called the shots, but let's just say it's not a far-fetched idea. John Bolton and Elliott Abrams are known war criminals. Trying to kill Maduro wouldn't even rank very high on their resume. It would be a footnote. Yeah, I just remembered. I tried to murder the elected president of Venezuela with an exploding drone. It was, just a little hobby of mine. I just wanted to give it a try. I forgot to mention that. It's not on the resume, but I just forgot to mention it. Anyway, before we run out of time, let's get to one of the most common complaints by our mainstream media of the Maduro government. They say he wasn't elected. The election was rigged. He doesn't have the support of the people. Max Blumenthal asked him about that.
Venezuela has an open electoral registry. Venezuela does not have compulsory voting. It has an electoral registry in which 99% of voting-age people are registered, in contrast to the United States, in which over 30% of voting-age people are not in the electoral system.
Wow, that does sound like a big difference. Here in the U.S., we are constantly trying to make it harder for people to get registered. We are putting in place new laws designed to stop people from registering to vote, and we're purging voters who were registered. In fact, a study last week found that 17 million U.S. voters have been purged from the voter rolls since the last election. In the U.S., the ruling elite want as few people as possible to be able to cast a vote. They want as little democracy as possible. Democracy is a thorn in their side, a wrench in their gears, a tick in their fruit salad, a sick, mangy dog in their bed when it was supposed to be sexy time night, a hair in their tapioca pudding. That's all the examples I have. That's all of them. On the other hand, in Venezuela, nearly everyone is automatically registered to vote. Boy, that sounds a lot better. But Maduro's legitimacy is more than just that.
I won 33% of registered voters. How much did Donald Trump get when he won? 22% of registered voters. On top of the fact that 30% of voting-age people in the U.S. are not registered. These are small details one can see. The level of legitimacy of the Bolivarian revolution, of Venezuelan democracy, the level of legitimacy of my leadership as President of the Republic, of the governors, of the mayors, of the constituent members, of the legislators is very high. It's real. It's what the KKK of the United States does not want to understand.
I think he means our racist ruling elite when he says the KKK. He doesn't mean the literal Ku Klux Klan. I don't think he's too worried about winning them over anytime soon. But yes, Maduro got much more of eligible voters in Venezuela to vote for him than Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton got to vote for them. And whereas we vote on completely unaccountable, ridiculous computer voting machines, unlike any other country, Venezuela votes with publicly viewable paper ballots. I'm going to read from you. I want you to see this. This is from a letter written to the European Union by one of the international observers to the last election that Maduro won in 2018. It's just last year. They said, I was a member of a roughly 100-strong core of observers of the May 20th Venezuelan election. We met senior representatives of all the candidates and questioned them closely. We examined the electoral system in detail and on election day observed voting procedures across the country. We noted not only the sophistication of the voting system, which in our view is fraud-proof, but also that every stage, from the vote itself to the collation of returns, their verification and electronic submission was conducted in the presence of representatives of the contending parties. Do you get the point? Their elections are way, way more legit than ours. Just know that. Just know that going forward. Anyway, this whole segment is not meant to say everything Maduro has done has been wonderful, or that I know for certain that he's an awesome guy, and if you were best friends with him, he would take you out on your birthday and tell you that you're way better off without your ex-wife. She was awful. She wasn't good enough for you, man. Let me get you another drink. I don't know. I don't know that he'd do that. But I do know that the Venezuelan elections are far more real and accountable than ours are. I know the Venezuelan people are under economic attack by us, the United States. We are stealing their money and food. And known U.S. war criminals are trying to bring down the country's government. These facts are indisputable. But you won't hear that on corporate media because we have an economy built on death and destruction. And we wouldn't want to get in the way of that, now would we? We have to go to a quick break, but I have live stand-up comedy shows coming up in Los Angeles and Ventura, California. Also shows in Milwaukee and Madison, Wisconsin. And of course, as always, Washington, D.C. Tickets are at redactedtour.com. I'll be right back with a lot more.
I'm Chris Hedges. The corporate coup d'etat has destroyed our democratic institutions. The commercial media is burlesque, part of the reality show presidency. Expose the trivia, lies, and deceit. On Contact, question more.
Do you know what you've got in your hand? You might think it's a phone, but in the news, we see it as TV. With Pluto TV, the free and unlimited TV app, you can get TV everywhere for free. And since TV is everywhere, so is RT. Streaming on all your favorite devices, outdoors or inside, any time of day or night. Catch all of our award-winning shows, news, and cutting-edge analysis everywhere you look and wherever you go. Question more.
Как будто, да, чуть-чуть опустился на эпоху.
Алло, курсанты, веселее! Броуновское движение какое-то.
Обычно я такой домашний человек, а тут ушел из дома, поплыл.
Парус на Урал, парус на Урал, парус на Урал, пошел все наверх.
Мама, бронзовик.
Нормально, давайте.
Насколько я сильная, оказывается.
Я боялся на катамаране по речке плавать, потому что утонуть мог. А сейчас, честно, плыву и все равно уже. Ну, не утонем. Дай бог.
Welcome back to Redacted Tonight VIP. I'm still Lee Camp. Let's go now to my interview with the co-founder of Code Pink, the always amazing Medea Benjamin. Medea, thanks for coming back on.
Good to be with you, Lee.
Good to see you again in these simple matters of war and peace. I wanted to start off with Saudi Arabia. You've done incredible work exposing kind of the partnership between our government and their government to create, for lack of a better term, death and destruction around the world. Your organization, Code Pink, is having a vigil today. Is that right?
We are commemorating 1 year since the Saudi bombing of a school bus. You know, these kids were going out on a summer outing. They were all excited, and all of a sudden there was a Raytheon bomb that just blew up the whole bus.
In Yemen, they were.
In Yemen,
yeah.
in Yemen. And 40 children were killed, incinerated, dozens more wounded. And this was nothing that would change the U.S. support for the Saudi-led bombing, according to Donald Trump. And so it's a year from that time. We're going to be in the Senate atrium doing a memorial for the children who were killed, and then going around to some of the worst members of Senate. That's kind of easy to do, you know.
Pretty much
Not a hard
most of them,
selection. Yeah. To ask them why they continue to support Saudi Arabia in its horrendous war in Yemen.
Where do things stand with Yemen? Because it seems like, I mean, not seems like, it has been years that we've been talking about the horrors that are going on there, the endless bombing, the famine. Where do things stand with Yemen?
Well, this was one of the examples, like, remember when George Bush invaded Iraq and said, oh, this is going to be done in a couple of weeks,
right.
A couple of months at the most. The wonderful king, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the bone saw murderer, he thought, well, same kind of thing, Yemen, let's get involved. This was March of 2015, and thought it would be over in a couple of weeks because Saudis by far have more massive power with all the U.S. weapons that they get. And this has been going on until now, and things have only gotten worse. In fact, now it's just insane. The Saudi coalition included the Emirates. So you have, and now that's split up. The Saudi forces on the ground are now fighting the Emirate forces on the ground, which is a secessionist force in the southern part of the country. And then you have the Houthis, who are more aligned with Iran, that are fighting with the Saudi coalition. And then you got Al-Qaeda and ISIS over here. So it's just an absolute disaster. And of course, the ones to suffer are the civilians. And the entire country has become a a zone where the infrastructure is not working, where the health care system doesn't work. Just in 2017, there was the worst outbreak of cholera. There's constant outbreaks of terrible diseases. And every 10 minutes, a child is dying from the effects of the war, which is both the bombings as well as the malnutrition that comes with devastating the water system, not having enough food available. So it is a total mess, and the U.S. continues to play a strong role, despite the fact that Congress, both houses of Congress, miracle of miracles, has said we want to stop the support for the Saudi war in Yemen.
I want to move on to Iran. The administration now has a goal to economically destroy Iran. And, of course, it's going to go after their medicine and their food and necessities. You guys with Code Pink have been doing teach-ins. Can you talk about that?
Yes, we've taken trips to Iran, and we have 2 more coming up in September and October. We think it's very important to go there and see for yourself. And people are just blown away by how incredibly nice the Iranian people are. And now we're doing teach-ins. So the idea of those teach-ins is saying, who wants to go to war with Iran? Because, everybody says they don't want to go to war, even Donald Trump says, but some people do, And it's not just John Bolton. So we're kind of digging underneath that to look at the, quote, think tanks. We shouldn't even call them think tanks. They're stink tanks. Maybe we should call them stink tanks. Foundation for the Defense of Democracy, Freedom Watch, the lobby group AIPAC.
Or thoughtless tanks.
Thoughtless tanks. Yeah. Which branches of government, like the Office of Foreign Assets Control in the Treasury, that's implementing all of these horrible sanctions. So we're going down the list of all these different groups that are pushing us towards war and doing teach-ins in their lobby, if we can get in their lobby. We just went to the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. We couldn't go up. We got kicked out of their lobby, and so we went out around the side of the building and said, "Oh, it's lunchtime, so let's sit and have something to eat." It was in Obam Pond. The police came to kick us out of there. So we couldn't even be. We were kicked out of Obam Pond. You can't even eat in the building if you've tried to tell the truth about one of the tenants. Wow. So our next one will be at AIPAC, and I don't think they'll be very nice to us either.
So speaking of, I'm glad you brought up AIPAC. What is the connection between our policy right now with Iran, the foreign policy there, and Israel?
Well, Israel and Saudi Arabia have wanted the U.S. to go to war with Iran and do their bidding for them because they both hate Iran for different reasons. And AIPAC didn't want to get into the Iran nuclear deal, has been pushing, as Netanyahu has been pushing, for the U.S. to implement harder and harder and harder sanctions. And in the meantime, AIPAC, of course, has been very busy in our Congress of trying to continue to solidify the support for Israel. Mm-hmm. And it does that by making sure that our tax dollars, over $3 billion of them, will continue to go to an already wealthy country to buy more of our weapons. And it also does that by making sure that every new member of Congress takes a trip to Israel on AIPAC's dime.
All expenses paid. Yeah, because our media, our corporate media loves to talk about foreign influence in our elections, but the biggest foreign influence in our elections and our government by far is Israel and AIPAC. Right?
That's absolutely right. And if you're a new person in Congress, you are strong-armed until you agree to take a trip to Israel. And I said it was on AIPAC's dime. It is AIPAC's dime, but they pretend it isn't. They created this fake educational group, the American Israel Education Fund, and they organized the trips through this other group to make it, quote, legal. So we are filing an ethics complaint because we think it's totally illegal. I mean, it's so phony that they don't even have paid staff on this fake education group. You know who pays the staff? You want to take 3 guesses?
AIPAC?
AIPAC, yes. AIPAC pays the staff. The boards are overlapping everything. It is AIPAC, just with another name on it.
Well, you got to respect some good money laundering, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to move to Venezuela real quick. Just recently, the Trump administration amped up the embargo on Venezuela, making it like a full embargo, trying to shut off all food and medicine there. But that's nothing to scoff at, right? That's deadly, isn't it?
Well, it was already deadly, as we saw from reports that were put out by the Center for Economic Policy Research, showing that over 40,000 people had died as a result of these sanctions, even before these new, more draconian sanctions were implemented. So yes, this is going to mean a lot more people in Venezuela will die. And it's this horrible self-fulfilling prophecy, because they want to say, look how miserable it is in Venezuela, look how many people are leaving, look how hard it is for them to get the things they need to survive, and then the U.S. is choking them off. The people in this Trump administration have no concern over the well-being of the people of Venezuela.
You're one of the most active peace protesters, peace activists in this country. You've been doing it for many years now. We've talked about some of your successes. Obviously, in the peace activism game, there are few successes compared to losses going up against the largest, military-industrial complex in the world. What do you tell to activists? How do you kind of keep going at it day after day when it can seem so daunting?
Well, there's ups and downs all the time. I mean, you see the incredible grassroots uprising in Puerto Rico and how successful that has been of getting rid of a governor. You see the uprising in Sudan that just happened, incredible example of people power. And so, there are places around the world and ups and downs that happen, but you see the swelling and the rising up of people. I wish we would see it more here. I mean, I think it's exciting that we have some really good candidates running for president, but it would be nice if we had, a little more of that oomph of getting out there and demanding changes in our government. But, we have made changes over our history in the course of our moving from a less democratic to more democratic society, and we're still far from a really democratic one. But I think we have elements in our history to show us the way forward. And I just think we have to keep getting out there and doing things and trying things differently. It's not always the same thing of, getting as many people into the streets as you can. It's more creative kind of protests like the environmentalists are doing right now. The Extinction Rebellion, I think, is really exciting. We always have to be creative, but I think, we do, as a global community, make change happen, and we just have to keep doing it.
Well, you're truly an inspiration, so thank you for all your work. CodePink.org is where people can find out more, correct?
CodePink.org. Please sign up. Join us in some of these actions.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
That is our show, but if you want more, I put out web-exclusive videos all the time at youtube.com/redacted. Tonight, I have recent ones on how Tulsi Gabbard has been robbed by Twitter and Google. I have another one on Joe Biden saying that all poor kids are black. It's insane. And also check out my podcast, Common Censored. Until next time, good night and keep fighting.